Dean, welcome.
Kory, thank you for having me. It's been a few weeks coming, and based on the timing, I don't know when you're going to publish. I know your Hoosiers won it all, so wanted to start out by congratulating you on the win. Very exciting.
Thank you. Go Hoosiers. What an unbelievable season.
Yeah, absolutely.
When I think about you, Dean, the word that comes to mind is charisma. You have such a presence when you walk in a room, regardless of business or social. You have a certain aura about you, almost in a Dean Martin, Frank Sinatra kind of presence. I'm curious, growing up, was your personality always like that?
The timing might be perfect. This is the first webcast I did. And although I did not plug it in or anything, I thought this would be a good touch for me. So maybe touching on that. So I really appreciate the kind words. I think it has a lot to do with my upbringing. My father definitely is a character in his own right. And I think I picked some of that up. And now I've got a almost 21-year-old son and a almost 18-year-old daughter. I definitely think my daughter has picked up that side of me where my son is a little more reserved. And I believe in one thing. It doesn't matter what you're doing, whether it's been school, whether it's been sports, or, in our careers, if you're not having fun doing it, it's not worth doing.
Absolutely. We'll get into your career at Ferguson, but if that didn't work out, I think a professional wedding goer would be a good backup plan for you.
I think you could be right there.
I'm sure family weddings in the Armstrong family are a lot of fun.
Good times.
So, Dean, you have a unique career and you're coming up on 30 years at Ferguson.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, just coming up in about 2 weeks, I'll be celebrating my 30th anniversary with Ferguson. It's very exciting.
Congratulations. 3 decades at a single company. We'll get into it, but a publicly traded, large corporation at that. You've spent more years of your life with Ferguson than without Ferguson at this point.
Yeah. As we get older, it gets a little bit scary. You start to realize that you've been with your company more than 50% of your life. And then you get to that point where you've been married over 50% of your life. And as amazing as it is with children, all of a sudden they start creeping up on you in age, although that age difference is always what it was from the beginning. So yeah, Ferguson has been a great company. Is a great company, really has offered myself and a lot of people I work with great opportunities. And I think, the tenure that Ferguson is a testament in its own right to, the company that it is.
So before you, Dean, your dad was at Ferguson?
Yeah, my dad now keep in mind, Ferguson, although founded in 1953, really grew a lot through acquisition. So my father was a product of a couple of acquisitions. He ended up having the opportunity to retire 5 years ago, but that's how I came into the business. I graduated college in '95. Started out there like a lot of us, looking at what am I going to do now? And he had spoken to his boss at the time. I was living in Los Angeles. I graduated from Loyola Marymount University. I decided after growing up in San Diego, I wanted to stay in LA for a while. So my father ended up talking to his boss to see if there was any manufacturers that were hiring college grads. At this time, Ferguson was owned by Wolseley PLC out of the UK, which was fairly considered a holding company for 3 different regional wholesalers. The largest being Ferguson Enterprises, which was everything west of the Rockies. And then you had Famillion in the southeast of the country and Famillion Northwest, which was the northwest of the country. So I was actually hired by Famillion, but the board of Wolseley had been on my father's boss's case about replicating a very successful college trainee program that Ferguson had since the beginning. I spoke to my father's boss at the time. He said, "Hey, I've got to get this training program under wraps. How would you like to be our first trainee?" handed me a dusty training manual and asked a couple questions and ended up joining the training program as it was the first renditions. It was a good opportunity, and obviously 30 years later, one that I don't regret.
Did you ever work directly with your dad?
I grew up with my father telling me any chore I had. He was the first person to tell me, if you ever worked for me, I would fire you. So fortunately, our careers, although we did have collaboration, and I definitely worked with some of his team members, I never directly worked under my father or very close to him. Probably a good thing, although I think he's probably proud that he saw my work work ethic from a preteen to where I ended up becoming a lot stronger, and he was a model for that with his dedication to doing a good job for his company and his customer.
If you want to take a step back and introduce, to the common person who may not know or be familiar with Ferguson, a high level of what the company is and what they do.
The roots of Ferguson go back to 1953, 73 years. I think that puts us at. So Ferguson grew through organically at first, but our real growth started when we were acquired by Wolseley PLC in 1982. They had three companies in the United States. We were listed on the London Stock Exchange. Wolseley PLC owned other distribution companies in several different countries. North America became really the U.S. dominant portion of Wolseley PLC. Wolseley ended up rebranding in 2017 to Ferguson PLC to reflect that U.S. dominance. We had a dual listing. We went from being listed solely on the London Stock Exchange to having secondary listing on the New York Stock Exchange beginning in 2001. Eventually, our primary listing transferred to the New York Stock Exchange in 2022. In 2024, the non-North American business was divested, and PLC dropped the PLC and became a U.S. domiciled Ferguson Enterprises. Today, we're very proud that we're a 100% North American business headquartered in Newport News, Virginia. We're a big company. A lot of people don't realize our size. We're sitting right around 145 on the Fortune 500. Our latest fiscal year revenue was 32 billion in sales. We've outperformed the S&P 500 7 out of the past 10 years. Hopefully the future looks promising for us there. And we have over 35,000 associates that are broken into 7 customer groups. Our leadership team has done a good job pushing collaboration between those customer groups. We really refer to it internally as One Ferguson. We have over 1,500 locations comprised of 60 million square feet of warehouse space. We're proud to say that we have within 97% of the U.S. population, there's a location within 60 miles. We have over $4 billion of inventory on our shelves. So while a lot of the industry where we see wholesale and building supply going towards a more broker mentality in a lot of areas, where we take a lot of pride is in controlling our own destiny by inventory on our shelves. And that's a commitment that's only getting stronger with the addition of more regional distribution centers than that.
But what are the 7 different buckets?
We have our dual trade bucket, which is more of our traditional. A lot of people think of Ferguson plumbing and HVAC first, right? So we have that division that caters to the trade in those 1,500 plus locations across the country. We have industrial. We have underground utilities. We have the group I'm in, Ferguson Facility Supply, composed of multifamily, hospitality, senior living, education, and large scale retail office space. Once you get past new construction in those segments, it really becomes a specialty division. So we obviously participate in the hospitality new construction sector.
The majority of our conversation will focus on your division, particularly hospitality. If we go back 30 years, what was your first job at Ferguson? What were you selling?
I entered as our first trainee that was to replicate. I was hired by Familion, which was sister companies with Ferguson. Now, within 3 years, we had merged. Ferguson was the biggest, most well-known, with the most market dominance. So I started as a trainee. I won't get into the training program, given that I was first to go through it with Familion. My transition into sales came a lot quicker than most associates who get an opportunity to be an outside salesperson. And how did I do that? Well, my location I worked at, and keep in mind this was mid 90s, so my forklift training wasn't the greatest, and I was asked to go unload a truckload of water heaters, and this was a building that was built on stilts. And I got halfway through that truck, and next thing I knew, I bumped into the building. Fortunately, it didn't slip or fall, although the building department and fire department did come. The vice president of sales ended up paying a visit to that location, and he asked if he could talk to me upstairs. Well, this is surely it. This is my last day. Much to my surprise, said, "You know what, Dean? Your father, as he was coming up in the company, was a heck of a salesperson. We think you would make a great salesperson too." And I was very surprised. He had given me the offer to go out on the road in West LA to call on service and repair plumbers at the time. So you're talking about Santa Monica and Beverly Hills, West LA, just a great market for.
And you're a territory sales rep, so you're selling and distributing plumbing fixtures to the plumbers in this small area at the time.
That's correct. My first question was, do I get a Taurus? Because at that time, outside salesperson, you're getting a Toyota Taurus or a Chevy Celebrity. So I got a Taurus, and it was the quickest yes. I said yes to an opportunity, and I ended up spending time on the road, and I loved calling on the service and repair shops in that area. But what you couldn't ignore was I would drive down Santa Monica Boulevard every day, and what would I pass? I would pass hotels. I would pass the Beverly Hilton, and I would start to question, gosh, what's going on at that hotel for their plumbing at the time? Just wondering about the opportunities inside of there.
When you're selling, to these service and repair shops, it's a lot of onesie, twosie toilets and fixtures. Is it correct?
Yeah, it's correct. So it could be, service and repair shops that are catering to single family homes, but more than likely, especially a lot of these companies were over 100 years old, and they're still around today, 30 years later, where they service the local community. So it could be an apartment building, it could be anything. But you're right, it's generally on the smaller side, and that's why my eyes got so big when I would drive by a luxury hotel and start to wonder, how did they buy their material? So I took that jump off the cliff.
So you're driving by the hotel, and you're there thinking, in the 90s, I'm selling, a toilet or a fixture or two at a time to these plumbing shops. But I drive by this hotel, and every hotel room's got a bathroom, and every bathroom has, a toilet, a sink, a faucet, a shower head, and a toilet paper holder and accessories, and the wheels start turning. At the time, was there a more senior rep or someone else covering large building or hotels?
No, no. We were primarily residential focused. So there was nothing formal in the way of calling on that type of property.
That type of property, how were they buying, hundreds of toilets and shower heads, if not from Ferguson, what was it back then?
So it wasn't what it is today. GPOs are present today, Avendra, Hilton Supply Management, Food Buy, who most management companies today fall under one of the GPO contracts. At that time, each individual hotel was purchasing from a local distributor who walked through their front door and had value to offer.
Wow. You're driving on the highway and seeing these large hotels, and what happens next?
So one day, I think I had a canceled appointment, and I'm like, well, I'm going to go stop by. Why not? So learned a lesson here. Pre-cell phones, if I wanted to call my father, I had a pager and a roll of quarters when I got that Ford Taurus. So I decided, okay, I'm just going to cold call the Beverly Hilton. And even back then, 20 bucks to pull your car up to valet, pulled up, went straight to the front desk and said, yes, I'd like to meet whoever is buying your plumbing parts here. I got a look, kind of like Julia Roberts did. It may have been the Beverly Hilton in the movie with Richard Gere. So I got a kind of downward stare up. Do you have an appointment? And I said, no. She said, well, I'll be happy to take your card. Thank you very much. I spent about 5 minutes inside, went out to my car, handed 20 bucks over for valet. I felt extremely defeated. One thing I did do at the time was I would have conversations with my dad when we were both on our landlines home at night. And he called me an idiot. He said, go back tomorrow and pull around to the receiving dock. You'll see other Ford Tauruses. You'll see other Chevy celebrities. Put a business card in your windshield. Two most important things: 2 boxes of donuts and 2 packs of cigarettes. So he said, park your car, walk in through the receiving dock. If they have security, just give a head nod and let them know you're going to engineering, because they probably won't stop you. So find engineering, walk in, and the first person you talk to, start a conversation. So I did that, and I got through security, no problem. I walked into an empty engineering room, although I did hear some ruffling around in the back. Heard somebody yell, not so nicely, who's out there? And I said, hey, it's Dean from Famillion. I'm here to sell you your plumbing parts. Guy's gruffling. I can hear him just not wanting to see me. And he walked through the corridor and he saw those donuts and maybe the cigarettes on top. And he got on his walkie-talkie and he said, engineering, we have a code yellow in the engineering office. Within about 10 minutes, 15 or so engineers, very smoky room, a couple of empty donut boxes, introductions to a lot of people. And they told me, why don't you come back next week and take an inventory of our stock room and we can see if we can get something going, which we did.
And you start selling them plumbing fixtures?
I did. So started selling them plumbing fixtures, and probably 4 months into not looking beyond the engineering room and really starting to question what goes on in a hotel outside of the repair and maintenance side of the business. I mean, I was happy with the orders that were coming through just from an MRO perspective, and was very fortunate to become friends with the director of engineering and the GM of the hotel. So 4 to 5 months in of making them happy, I showed up. I was there for my biweekly milk run. And as I was leaving, the GM of the hotel walked in and he goes, perfect timing. Let me bring you down to Merv's wing. And Merv Griffin had owned the hotel at the time. It was the Beverly Hilton. I don't know where I'm heading, but I go over. There's a lot of important looking people sitting around a table with a set of blueprints, and general manager interrupts them and says, hey, this is Dean Armstrong. I'd like you to give him an opportunity on the upcoming renovation for all of our plumbing and hardware and anything else that he can help with. And that really, you had alluded to, were we in this business? And we weren't. And we serviced that job very well. And it ended up turning into a across the country opportunity with the same general contractor.
Was that job the first time you supplied a hotel renovation? The volume, do you remember how many rooms was at the Beverly Hilton?
It was a portion of the hotel. I can't remember, but I know it was big.
Right. You're talking a couple hundred rooms in that hotel at
Yeah.
least, versus you're selling a shower head or a toilet at a time to a local plumber in your current job. And through your ambition and audacity to go in through the back, you now start supplying the Beverly Hilton with their daily like plumbing repair needs,
That's
but
correct.
this is your first hotel renovation, supplying a mass volume. So I imagine that was a large order for you early in your career.
Yeah, it was a large order for me, and it was opening to the leadership that I reported to at the time. And that brought us honestly to where we're at today. This general contractor ended up having a project in New Orleans was their next job. I worked for Familian. Ferguson was a sister company. We didn't talk between companies at the time. And so it was game on. And we successfully supplied that job in New Orleans. I still didn't know really what I was doing, except for I knew the product really well. I understood the importance of schedules. I listened very well, but I still did not understand the mechanics of business. And a third opportunity with the same general contractor came up. They would fax me over their list of material. I'd fax them back a bid. And I'd stop by their office to check in on this third project in Texas. And they said, "We lost it." "What do you mean you lost it?" The owner of the company was just too kind, where he knew I had no real clue of what I was doing. And he brought me back to his office and he sat me down and he explained bid work versus negotiated work. He went as far as making a phone call to the general contractor that was awarded the project in Texas and making an introduction over the phone, which opened up an opportunity for me to fax a quote to that general contractor. And all of a sudden, I had a second customer.
Two questions with that, Dean. Do the Beverly Hilton renovation for this general contractor. That general contractor then has a second project in New Orleans. That's your first time selling a plumbing fixture out of state, correct? So when you fax them the order and they say, we want to buy X number of fixtures and accessories, how did you get the product to New Orleans?
However, I could. So,
Did it come out of your local California branch and on a truck there, or you sourced it locally?
to be honest with you, I can't remember. The industry was so different back then. The one thing I do remember is, there was probably 600, let's say, stainless steel bar sinks on the job that were ordered and delivered to the job. Wouldn't have remembered that had I not gotten a page from my manager at the time, "Get up to our branch immediately." And I'm like, "What's going on?" Well, it ends up these sinks ended up not being used. They just sent them back to our branch in Van Nuys. So there's a truckload of sinks sitting there, and what are we going to do with them? Right. So all of this was a learning experience, and we certainly understand that site conditions or other elements end up, changing the scope of a job, especially in renovation where surprises can happen. But it was all a learning experience that I definitely learned a lot from.
After your first, national projects in New Orleans and you go for the third project in Texas and the general contractor you bid with loses, what do you think it was about you that, would entice a general contractor to call his competitor who beat him and say, "Hey, you should use Dean"?
Yeah. So keeping in mind the timeline of where we're at this time, we are probably in our infancy of our parent company merging Ferguson. And all of a sudden, there was this access to inventory, distribution centers, and other things that weren't previously available to me. So I was an employee of our Southern California branch, found a niche business and really took advantage of what Ferguson was and is in terms of a distribution company and started shipping from those local distribution centers. So the third project in Texas, we had started to blend together the three distribution companies in the United States. So almost overnight, all of a sudden, I've got access to distribution centers in across the country that weren't an option for me when we were solely operating as three individual companies. So that certainly helped grow the business for me and for Southern California. It took a little bit longer for the country where we really formalized this business as a national business. And that was surrounded around the 2007 housing crisis, where every residential salesperson at Ferguson started knocking on every door that might be buying material, looking for new opportunities. And they would knock on a door, and it could be in Atlanta, it could be in Maryland or Florida. It would be a renovation contractor. And they'd say, I know you don't know us, but we're with Ferguson and we'd like to learn more about your business. And very quickly, a number of doors they walked into, they said, well, what do you mean we don't know you? We work with you all the time. It caused some internal strife because I'm working for our Southern California branch and really found an untapped market where we weren't operating to the best of our ability of what we're doing today. And it caused a little bit of an internal stir, but really what it did do, our leadership immediately started talking about diversification.
When the reps and their territories in Maryland, Texas, Florida, start saying, I know you don't know me, we're Ferguson. And they say, what do you mean? I do know you. Why did they already know them?
Well, I was doing business with the customer. Oh, but it was all organic. It's such a, I mean, from then through today, it's a small industry. I mean, I look at the community of general contractors, and when we're all together at an industry event and business is business, just being friendly with each other, it's hard not to cross paths with your competition, but everyone does it with a smile. It's a tight community. It very rapidly picked up for myself after those first two general contractors, where I was able to then connect the dots and find others throughout the country, and really doing a lot of this over the phone.
We go back to this time period, and you have to have the perspective and the context of, we're not living in a world of emails and Zoom and computers. If I'm the Maryland sales rep and I go call on my local customer and he's buying from Dean in California, and I'm like, who's Dean in California? And that was really the roots of where Ferguson is today. But you were really a pioneer. So you go from selling toilets and plumbing fixtures to the local plumber to a renovation contractor in Maryland, literally on the other side of the country.
Yeah, I owe a lot to the people in the industry, my customers, the early ones and ones that I met last week. I'm constantly learning from our customer base. Going back to the community that the industry is, it just makes us all stronger. And to your point, it did end up leading to eventually, amongst other factors, into nationalizing the business, which gave me my first opportunity to work officially outside of Southern California.
Audacity is the word that comes to mind. Most people, Dean, in your position, regardless whether you're selling toilets or software, would say, I'm a territory sales rep and my corporation assigned me this territory. It wouldn't occur to most people to step outside of that, even if it didn't exist at the time. And where do you think that comes from? I mean, that's a very go getter, let me create something out of nothing mentality that started with the original hustle from stepping up to the Beverly Hilton. That's one thing that's still in your town and you drive by it every day. Now you're shipping toilets and plumbing fixtures across the country.
I definitely think it starts with ambition and just wanting to do the most you can. It also comes with, and would have never happened without the support of the company I work for. It was local leadership that was willing to invest in growing that business. And eventually it's turned into, and our corporate leadership continuing to invest in the business and allow us to grow and be better for our customers. So I think it's equal parts self-drive, but it doesn't happen without the support of the company.
Well, sort of your feet. And while you weren't a entrepreneur, I would label that an intrapreneur, entrepreneurial habits and behaviors within a larger organization. time, was it well received? One of the things that goes through my mind is someone up the ladder getting a call saying, "Hey, this territory is overstepping the line and selling in my territory." I guess the two reactions to that, if I'm the boss, I'd be, well, why aren't you going out and getting that business? Why is
Yeah,
the guy in California getting that business? You live there and it's your territory. And then on the other hand, two things can be true at the same time. You may get the call saying, "Dean, you're in California. What are you doing selling to customers in Maryland?"
absolutely not. It was not well received. I mean, my phone was ringing, my boss's phone was ringing, and although it wasn't well received, what ended up coming out of it was nothing but good because it exposed a larger opportunity, not only for individuals like myself, but for the company. I think, we talked about our different customer groups, and I guarantee you there's dozens of stories, and it's just the people that Ferguson has that do have that entrepreneurial or entrepreneurial spirit that find opportunity, take advantage of it. And maybe 14 years ago or so, that I was approached to participate in nationalizing this business. That would not have been an opportunity had there not been that initial number one, you know, hey, we found a knack. Number two, different markets wanting to be involved in that business, which really brings us up to, where we're at today. Ferguson, even though hospitality renovations may have been in its infancy, where it's at right now is, 13 years later is just unbelievable with the number of people we have, the verticals that we serve, and has really been rewarding to participate in.
You can kind of bridge the gap. I understand getting your hand slapped, to put it nicely, for overstepping your territory. But at the same time, 30 years later, you didn't get fired and you're still at the company. And so I think sometimes it takes a trailblazer or someone to think outside the box and go for it. Whether you're stepping up from the local territory to the Beverly Hilton to national. And I think, Dean, that's a good transition for the end of this conversation is where Ferguson is today.
Yeah.
And, you're really still doing on a larger scale, you are really still doing the same thing 30 years later, in a lot of ways. Do you want to explain what your position is today at Ferguson?
Yeah. So I am a part of our national accounts team. So national accounts, we had talked about customer groups. Each of our customer groups has national account representation. Fortunately, I'm a part of our what's called Ferguson Facility Supply, and we have national accounts in every area of that. So this is our specialization from a national account level, where we have national account managers in hospitality, in multifamily, in senior living, in education, in the large retail office. There's a couple different sides to our national account business: the renovation construction side and the maintenance repair operation side. We know even when the economy dips that people still have to keep the lights on. They need light bulbs, they need toilet paper, they need all of this different product that we sell. So the two businesses together complement, but I also don't think they exist without each other. So national accounts, we have both MRO side and the renovation side of hospitality national accounts. And then I am on the renovation side leading our national efforts from a contractor perspective. I have counterparts in national accounts that spend their time with brands and ownership. So we work very closely together, not only amongst each other in pre-construction, but also when that renovation is over, making sure that we know the management company and making sure that our national account manager, who has responsibility for that management company, understands what we did to participate in that job. And then it doesn't happen without our field. So we have national accounts, but what really makes Ferguson special is There's nowhere in the country that you work that we don't have representation, feet on the ground. So whether it's to your projects in a market that might be 2,000 miles away from your home base in pre-construction, or when you hand that property over to ownership and the management group ends up picking up and it's their responsibility for the upkeep of that property until the next renovation. We fill that gap. We've got the feet on the ground support that is 100% dedicated to supporting our renovation efforts. And we also have the feet on the ground with our territory managers and our hospitality BDMs that really manage at the local level the relationships and the ongoing maintenance with the individual properties.
Let's talk about relationships.
Yes.
When I think about relationships, you come to mind in business. And, can you speak to having relationships? We can get specifically to what you're doing now with supporting hotel renovations and general contractors like us at Axis. You sell a commoditized product and distribute. I know you have your own manufacturing of some products, but you distribute other products. But you're supplying at the end of the day widgets. And a lot of people would say, sort of like the old days, why wouldn't I just go to my local branch and buy the cheapest toilet I can get? Why am I working with a national relationship and, trucking in plumbing fixtures from all over the country? And why am I working with Dean and Ferguson for projects in Florida to Alaska? Can you speak to the relationships with the general contractor that you have and, the trust and credibility with that?
Yeah, I think from an internal perspective, our relationships, and they're not only relationships, they're partnerships and true partnerships with our branded manufacturers. So all of the manufacturers that you're typically seeing on your specifications, both your relationships at access, design, ownership, everyone's relationships with the respective hospitality teams at the manufacturers is extremely important, not only to us, but to you. Where I think Ferguson has emerged, and whether it's on the contractor side, whether it's on ownership side, is we are in a unique and very fortunate position of being pretty much every manufacturer's largest distributor. So what comes with that? Transparency. And when I talk about transparency, what we look at is we're a project company. And what we tout every day is your project was better because you worked with Ferguson. And the transparency component comes into it. Everybody, I don't care who you are, you're going to have supply chain issues. And sometimes they may be short term, they may be long term. But if you've got a project and there's dual specs approved, and it's like, hey, Dean, you know, the price is similar. What's making the difference here? And we want a successful project. So we're going to be candid with you that, hey, in our opinion, X manufacturer for this specific job is going to perform better. On top of that, we have our distribution center inventory. And as much as it is, I alluded to, it's over $4 billion on our shelves at all time. Inevitably, the product's going to be sitting in our New York distribution center and it's needed in Southern California. So obviously, we do count on our manufacturing partners from a supply chain perspective, but also, and this could be just level setting, maybe it's a design build job and there's a design concept, and obviously quality of product matters, warranty matters, and all things, but we also realize that ownership is charging you guys a lot of times with taking what design put together and making that design concept meet budget. And that's really where we provide a lot of value because of the spectrum of product that we represent, of making design meet budget while also keeping quality, warranty, supply chain, and all other factors in mind.
Absolutely. Dean, we're going to wrap up with a couple fun questions, but I think I just want to say, we've worked together for 5 or 6 years. I think the context of sharing your story of how it's evolved from, you know, being the first trainee and almost crashing a forklift into a building and
But no, I crashed it, just to be clear.
to it sort of laying the roots for what Ferguson would go on to become of a national hospitality, distributor. And that's just one small piece of the business. You have a lot with the perspective of time to look back on and be really proud of what you've accomplished, the shots you've taken, the trouble you got in, but you're still there going strong at it. It's such a cool story because we're talking about a 30-year time horizon where you have relationships with one general contractor, and then that leads to a second general contractor. And now you're working in 2 different states, in 3 different states, in national. And that's really what you're still doing today. In today's world, people switch jobs every couple of years. And so to have the longevity at such a large company with 45 or so employees, something to be really proud of, Dean. And I hope you take some time and think about that sometimes.
Thank you very much. As time passes by, a lot of it goes a lot faster than you'd like, and then sometimes it is helpful to have the reminders from partners such as yourself. And you guys are in no different position. I mean, seeing and working with you over the year, congratulations on your success, and we thank you for your partnership. And I appreciate you having. Now I'm going to get one more use of my official podcast mic. So I did watch your other podcast, and I noticed I don't think anyone had one. So I had to get one. So want to thank you for everything, and especially the opportunity to take some time and talk about the business. I am very passionate about it, and as you know, when we get together, sometimes you can't shut me up about it. Just thank you again.
It wouldn't be the hospitality without Dean from Ferguson. And honestly, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you, Dean, what's your favorite hotel?
Gosh, that's a tough one. I grew up in San Diego, and I've always loved the uh, Hotel Del Coronado. That pops to mind. I'm married to a flight attendant, so we're blessed with the gift of flying for free. We've had the opportunity to stay in a lot of hotels. I've got a lot at the top of the list, but you threw me for a little bit of a curveball there.
Are the Westin beds all that they're cracked up to be?
Funny, I'm going to get myself in trouble here. I'm on my Westin Heavenly Bed at home. Again, a product of having good partners in the industry, but I've been able to purchase a few Heavenly Beds. And I'll tell you what, I don't know if the bed changed. It probably didn't, but my body has. So our first Heavenly Bed, absolutely was heavenly. I had 2 hip replacements over the last 12 months, but my body needs to find a different bed now because I don't think it's them. I think it's me.
Dean, it's been a blast as always. I appreciate your time and thank you for sharing your story.
Yeah. Thank you very much for having me again.
See ya.